Hypnotic and glamorous, analog photography arrived at the cusp of the 20th century, a monochromatic trace of visual art data, framed and composed with amazingly precise and authentic detail. This unique machinic aesthetic, continuously developing technologically refined methods and outcomes to become an increasingly modern, essential modern commercial and creative depiction device throughout the first half of the 20th century. The photographic assemblage and output models its photomediate realm out of illumined tonality on a flat, effectively two-dimensional plane, looking inward and reflecting outward, delivering an analog photographic image, comprising a chemo-mechanical binary structure of light and its gradated absence. Compressed from 3 to 2 dimensions, replacing the third spatial dimension as a coda of distance, with the fourth spatiotemporal dimension in stasis, sharing a fixed, portable and reproducible aspect of photograph's unique worldview in fine, granular detail on its own terms. In her book, The Beauty Myth, How Images of Beauty Are Used Against Women, Naomi Wolf personalises her measure of flawless beauty, whereby the patriarchy is singularly accountable as a political force in their own socio-political dominance and containment of women. Responsibility is localised and rendered accountable, whether levelled at an identified individual, a cluster, or all males of a nexus regarding which end of the camera women or men manage, and from it, what portion they suffer or profit. Wolf seems not to recognise beauty as circumstance, hallmarked as a factor from within the melee of early photographic filmic action and output, greater than her identification solely of a classified plot. Indeed, it is true that the machinic image in its day can be too easily judged neutral in terms of intent, the stuff of happenstance, inconveniently difficult to localise, personalise and lay blame. Nonetheless, she is demonstrably correct in her recognition of a stubborn and sufficiently peak connection between certain categories of people in terms of gender, age and the impact of fashion, glamour, imagery, movies and modelling stardom, conditioning the lethal sociopathic effect of eating disorder illnesses. She deserves respect for consolidating that insight. Current expert medical advice to the fashion industry, along with honourable encouragement from the original 1960s adolescent and notably slender model, Dame Leslie Lawson, DBE, aka Twiggy, is to apply policies of inclusive design, styling, modelling and marketing for women of more realistic body shapes and sizes. Twiggy, mascara-eyed and biro slim, denotes the 60s full-on and marked the very first super skinny ideal to walk the walkway of very modern modelling. She was always a down-to-earth, phlegmatic London girl, psychologically and physically fit. Early in 2023, one example of the seriousness with which the situation is now taken, the Australian Labor government endorsed national support for sufferers of body image in connection with eating disorders. South Australian Taryn Brumfitt was appointed Australian of the Year in lieu of her role of founder of the body image movement, with a worthy mission that believes that everyone has the right to love and celebrate their body, regardless of shape, size, ethnicity or ability. Although Naomi Wolf's socio-political claims stand true against a certain lemniscus of machismo, there are no statistics measuring massed ranks of contemporary masculinity groomed in extremis for dominance over women. Either way, it would likely be at core a case of redundant masculinity, thoughtless and lacking in empathy, making advantage of lived experience of unique dominant formations of photography and its original monochromatic composite reality of detail, tonality, focus, line, texture and contrast. Seeking to maximise an overview, the best recommendation is that extent, blame or opinion are not erased, but set aside in lieu of an updated, independent existential phenomenology of photography. A freshly measured or reaffirmed view benchmarking responsibility and accountability for any effect of photo media on our lived experience, intercalated into our localised sense of reality, to be seen, warts and all, possibly circumstantial, beyond the personal, with emphasis on intelligence over justifiable emotion, without eradicating the latter. A more common sense understanding as refreshed intention, delivering productive outcomes. Throughout the first half of the 20th century, monochrome photography was pretty much all that was available, that was possible, on any requisite industrial scale, wherein faceted features, particularly the High Malar, photographically released a shutter, rendering a new modelling of the human visage, an unanticipated but enduring shift in realities, wherein the personal and general coalesce as requisite, a standard on the casting couch of stills and movies. The cheekbone, or malar, is a rhombus-shaped bone forming the eye socket and connecting with the temporal and maxillary bones shaping the zyggomat arc below and to the side of the eye socket across the palatine bone, maxillary or upper jaw bones. Our eyes provide the most intense communicative beacon between people at a viewable distance from each other across a four-dimensional void. It's been accurately measured that eyes are what we study most, and as we scan the face, or what we believe to be a face, of one to another, anticipating meaning. Subsequently, accredited and/or published research propounding modern linkages between photographic imagery and psychosocial illnesses in principia, including movies, video and digital media, join the chorus of the rise of the malar, along with its causal linkages to taller, super skinny fashion models and eating disorders, altogether a beautifully gaunt outlook. Eating orders and obsessive-compulsive exercise linked to mediation of photographic and film imagery did not register modern and postmodern public significance until the late 70s and mid-80s. Here with the American singer Karen Carpenter at her final performance. Karen's death from anorexia nervosa in 1983 caused widespread shock and recognition of eating disorders and image. Throughout the first half of the 20th century, monochrome photography was pretty much all that was possible and available on any requisite industrial scale. Decade after decade since photographers' invention, photographers have appended unique expressions, idiosyncrasies of its machinic aesthetic in the compositing of meaningful images out of photographic foibles that characterize the medium. For example, plane of focus and depth of field, angle of view, motion blur, and more and more. Busily, often wordlessly, photographers discovered for themselves pictorial tropes photography makes of this world and learn to stitch into our fabric of reality, a patchwork of liminal realities, of a photographic self, unconditionally or innately or provisionally staged, including all stops in and between. Realism peaked with the arrival of fixed monochrome imagery in terms of trace, tonality, resolution and detail. Imagine if your human reception of light was limited to those few factors constituting a machinic aesthetic, then you'll get the picture. No previous pictorial method depicted realism better than photographs. Indeed, what it still does is so good that its deception overrules absence of aroma, sonics, docility and taste recorded with the image as limitations ensconced into the subconscious, so that we may need to remind ourselves we are receiving a limited visual rendition of the real, monochrome, silent, still, framed, lacking taste, odour and texture. Photography is an interesting metaphor for how humans see. As light hits the retina, photoreceptors turn luminosity into electrical signals travelling through the optic nerve to the brain, wherein gradated signals are transformed into images. Both human and machine change their light into their respective material as visual data to memory, filtering their own meaning, aesthetic or reality. Nothing exists out there except for us and the camera, and what we can make of it in the mind's eye. In principle and fulfillment, it's the same whether a human or machinic aesthetic of object, subject and mediation. We are as one. Certainly there was always much commentary throughout popular media influencing each insight in character contextualised within its own decadal era, recognising the casting couch pro forma of a High Malar, a slender and above average height, and its constraint on fashion magazines and gossip columns throughout metropolitan and regional media, chattering away along a licensed, tall and skinny rules reality shift, tethered between beauty and film. March the 27th, 1956, Dorothy Rowe in the Telegraph Herald, Iowa, reports an insightful quote from Cecil Beaton, whom she heralds as the British photographer, author, artist, designer, lecturer and actor. Cecil Beaton, fashion and celebrity photographer in 1956. American women have the uncanny ability to wish themselves into any mould they choose. It seems to me that today all American women have high cheekbones, long graceful legs, delicate wrists and thin hands. A generation ago, nobody had high cheekbones. Now everybody has them. I don't really understand how women manage to change their actual bone structure, but apparently they do. I think it all started with somebody like Marlene Dietrich.